So last thing then on interviews, what do you think is most important to hit?
The most important thing I think for interviews is to know your stuff, because the people that you were talking to are likely sitting there with your documents that you wrote, and that is what they're kind of basing their conversation off of. And if you've applied to multiple different schools, you better remember what it is about this school and this supervisor that stuck out to you and why you've done it. I mean, some of that should be intuitive. You shouldn't have to think too hard about some of it, but some of it, if you apply to, several different places, you're going to want to make sure that you're sitting there and what you're saying and what you're presenting is matching what they have in front of them. So I think, and also remembering that when it comes to talking about your research stuff, they're looking for, like you called them earlier, the seed ideas, not getting too worried about having to roll out this whole well thought out research plan, but being able to talk passionately and honestly about your interests and why they interest you. Because I think that kind of, having that kind of passion for why you're there and what you're doing and why you're committed to this program, that shows through. People can look at you compared to people who are sitting there trying to just answer the exact right answer that they found online. If they can remember these 3 points, it'll tick all the boxes. I think if you're sitting there and you really care about what you're saying, that is really, really important when you're interviewing.
Totally. Enthusiasm does matter. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And so we don't feel like you need to be stilted and overly professional. Yeah, I think that like having some enthusiasm is a great, and I think that absolutely you need to know about that program, and in particular the 1 or 2 faculty that you want to work with when you interview. So here's 2 things that I feel like either gets missed or underplayed. So one thing, when they're like giving you information about things, take notes on what they're saying, even if you're just doing it performatively. I cannot tell you, it drives me insane. It drives me insane in all sorts of contexts when I'm sitting and talking to graduate school students about stuff and I'm telling them a bunch of things and they're not taking notes. And I don't mean because it's like, you're not going to remember. So what are we doing?
Yeah,
like, what are you
totally
doing? Show them the respect of like the information and that you're giving me is of value. So I'm going to like take little notes. So that's super important.
Yeah.
The other thing is have questions, have more questions than you need. Have, go in and have them be both specific and general, and try to have them be, real questions that you have. You might have to generate some, but like I can't tell you how many times where I've said like, okay, so what questions do you have for me? And they say, oh, I don't have any, or they have like 1 or 2. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
Like, you don't have questions, a bunch of them. And like, as you're talking to them and questions pop in your head, write them down. So that way, when you get to the question time, you can ask questions, or even while they're talking, say, can I ask you a question about that? Or do you want me to wait? Like, be engaged. Big decisions. They want to see that you're engaged. That also goes back to Amy's enthusiasm piece. So those are a couple of things. And then the last thing I'll say is, while you're interviewing, be nice to everyone. Like, be nice to any staff people. I mean, you don't have to be ridiculous. Like, if you're kind of a quieter person, you don't have to all of a sudden be, really out there and that's not what I'm saying. But like, be like showing that, just niceness, politeness, whatever. It really does matter. And that, there is, if you're interacting with staff, if you're interacting with current students, if you behave poorly, it will get back to the people who interviewed you, and it absolutely can make a difference.